Hello, everybody. It is. There we go. There we go. It's the final day of E3, or the final 24 hours worth of E3 content coming out of Games Up. We just watched the Kind of Funny press conference, the Kind of Funny games showcase. Lewis is not going to react to this one with me because I am a fairly well-engaged member of the Kind of Funny community, so a lot of this means a lot to me, and he wouldn't necessarily have the same kind of ground to speak on, which is totally fair. This is also going to be a lot shorter because they had a lot of stuff and they explained a lot of stuff, but we're not going to go through every chronological announcement like we usually do, because there was a lot of stuff crammed into a fairly tightly packed conference, and going through it would be a bit dense. So we're going to go just sort of react to the conference as a whole. And I have to say, I really, really, goes without saying, but really, really liked it. It was a totally different kind of vibe from all the other conferences, as was the previous showcase that they did at the PlayStation, or in lieu of the PlayStation Experience last year. It had a totally down-to-earth vibe about it, which I really liked. It was a lot more chilled out. It had a lot more of Kind of Funny's kind of on-brand comedy, which was really nice as somebody who is a big fan of that kind of stuff and a big member of that community. Not a big member, that sounds really pretentious, but a well-engaged member of that community. All of that was really lovely to see. I suppose it wouldn't necessarily mean the same to everyone watching, especially a lot of the kind of E3 crowd that they'd be pulling in, but if you sort of watched it and it didn't make sense to you but you enjoyed it, I'd highly recommend that you give them a look and give them a shout. So, with that being said, we need to talk about the games. And one of the things that I really liked here was the wide split of games. They mentioned in the show that there was last time they did one of these, they struggled with kind of splitting it up by all the different types of games there were, and this time instead they just sort of made what flows together make sense together. Although there was a series of games called just What or Weird or Wow games, and they were cool. But I really liked that. I really liked that there was a good variety of games all over the place. It didn't all look like one type of thing. It didn't all come to one platform. It was very agnostic in all senses of the word. And so whatever there was probably something cool here for you. Really nice to see VR getting a big shout. Obviously, they work quite closely with the Upload VR conference that was earlier this day. We didn't watch the Upload VR conference at the time. I've watched it since. That was a really, really good show. But yeah, really cool to see them working on some VR stuff, and some of the stuff that's coming out of VR looks amazing. Falcon Age, of course, still looks just incredible. It's you get to raise a bird, and he's a cool bird, and gives you fist bumps, and he does cool tricks. Why wouldn't you want that? This is great. But yeah, a lot of the VR stuff looked really cool, and it was very nice to see it get that kind of presence on the show. There was a lot of indie, I mean, it was all indie stuff, but there was a lot of kind of what you'd think of as traditional indie stuff, so one-team developers, or not backed by any kind of company. A few of the announcements here were backed by Pop Agenda Co., who is, of course, run by Geneviève Saint-Onge, who's married to Greg at Kind of Funny. So their connection there makes a lot of sense that some of those games would show up in the show. But it was really nice that there are actually still a lot of independent developers here. Totally one-man teams, maybe even still looking for that kind of connection to get them on a storefront or to push their game somewhere. Some of these were games that were just being announced for the first time, talked about in terms of development for the first time to the public, and seeing that kind of ground level understanding of what those games are was really, really cool. My personal favourite game of the show came out of the weird section. It was Skatebird, because it's a skateboarding bird, and I don't know. It's like Tony Hawk, but I was surprised there were not more Tony Hawk jokes in it. But yeah, I loved the idea of Skatebird. It looked like one of those super nice kind of just laid back, chill games that you can jump into, have a bit of fun with. It's very lo-fi in that sense, and I'm really liking that vibe right now. I thought Skatebird looked really cool, although a little uncomfortable with how graphically the birds ragdoll. I don't know that I'm going to be able to watch any time I fail on those skateboards. Poor birds. What we do for entertainment, eh? The other thing that was really nice about this conference is how this is a weird way to describe it, but San Francisco centric it was. And what I mean by that is Kind of Funny are well known to be established in San Francisco. They have quite a lot of good connections in San Francisco, and they talk about that area of the world really well, and all the things that they go to regularly, their favorite restaurants and bars and places. And what was nice here is that they were highlighting those without making it like a jut in the podcast. It didn't feel out of place. A perfect comparison for this is something like the Microsoft Lego car, which is it's a big thing for who that company is. For Microsoft, it's a big thing that Forza has that, but it always feels a little bit out of place when it's just kind of put on the stage and left to be there. It doesn't necessarily feel like part of the conference. Whereas here, being in like their favorite bar or the place where they get coffee or Starbucks, which isn't necessarily the same thing, but having those kind of locales play a part in it was really nice. It felt like you were being taken on a guided tour almost of these games and going from one to the next to the next. The final part of the conference was their One More Thing, which was Adam's Ascension, or I think Adam's Ascending. It's one of the two. I forget it off the top of my head, but we'll go with Ascending. It's Adam's Ascending, and it was a trailer that was given to them by a person who made a live-action trailer in the previous one they did, and they kind of looked at it and thought, oh, a live-action trailer isn't going to play very well. Then it did, so they put this guy up front. And I think that spoke pretty perfectly to the ethos of the show overall. The idea and the intention of this show was, here's a bunch of indie developers that you might not have ever heard of before, that you probably haven't heard of the games before, and that you don't expect what's coming out of them. This is not like an E3 conference in the case of like Sony or Microsoft. It's not them being like, and one more thing, we brought, I don't know, the entire Banjo-Kazooie collection, or we brought all of the Splinter Cell games to VR. They're not going for that big stage show bravado thing. This is a real, honest look at real, honest games being made by real, honest devs with really cool ideas. And the fact that they gave that one more spot to a trailer that looked good, but it didn't have like, E3 levels of polish. It didn't have crazy effects. It was like a very honest, as I said before, presentation of what that game is and what this person is trying to achieve, regardless of the scale of it. I think is a really, really nice way to summarize what this conference was about. It was about being more down to earth. It was about being cool. It was about giving a platform to smaller developers, and Kind of Funny said it quite a bunch, of just elevating those games that might not get elevated otherwise to the heights of E3 as best they can. It was awesome. It was a really, really nice, totally refreshing, totally different kind of conference. And obviously it's quite a lot of work for them to do year on year. I guess it would be a huge amount of work for them to do, but I kind of hope it does continue. If E3 keeps going in the stride that it's in, where, there's not necessarily loads of conferences. There's not necessarily the biggest of announcements. There's more directs than stage shows. There's more. If E3 continues to go in that way, then I really hope that something like this keeps going, where it can maybe help to usher in what's next for E3. Like, maybe it is all directs, but maybe some of them can be super polished. Some of them can be more elevator-ish and more elevate-ish, not elevator-ish, more elevating and more honest in what they're doing. There's room at E3 for smaller developers, one-man teams, or one-woman teams. It's a really bad phrase. Smaller developers, one-person teams, or giant developers with fireworks and pyrotechnics everywhere, and all of them can fit into stage shows and directs. I just like the idea that E3 is getting more diverse, and I really feel like Kind of Funny was a pretty perfect way of showing that off. So yeah, it was a good time overall. I really enjoyed it. And if you didn't get a chance to see it, you should go and have a look at it. I don't know whether it was on the main Twitch. We tuned into. It was obviously on Kind of Funny's YouTube. I don't know whether it was shown on Twitch or anything else like that. We streamed it directly from the YouTube. So I would recommend that you do the same. Go and find it, hunt it down, watch it. It's really good fun. Also, the thing they did with the game demo section kind of in the middle was really nice. It was a very smart way to point out how different they are from other E3 conferences. That was real good. That was that. That was Kind of Funny's E3 conference for 2019. There's words I didn't think I'd be saying when I saw them launch off into Kind of Funny. And there it was, E3 2019. And we will keep going. We've got Square Enix next and Nintendo closing us up in a few hours after that, to be fair. But we're sort of starting the last day of content now. So that was that. Thank you very much. We will see you for the next one. And until then, the game is well and truly up.